With Hashem's help, we are going to begin learning Hilchos Basar B'Chalav. Starting with Siman Pei Zayin, this Siman is going to discuss which types of meats have the prohibition of Basar B'Chalav and what is considered to be cooking. This Siman will have a total of 11 halachis, beginning with Seif Aleph. Says the Mechaber that Kasav B'Torah, it is written in the Torah, that a person should not cook a meat of a kid in its mother's milk 3 times. Echad li'isur bishul. The first time is to teach me that it's prohibited to cook them together. V'echad li'isur achila, and the second time is to teach me that it is prohibited to eat them together. And ve'echad li'isur hana, and the third time is to teach me that we are not allowed to have benefit from them. Now says the Mechaber, that why did the Torah repeat a second time, lo sevashel gedi, that a person should not cook a kid? Why didn't the Torah just say lo soichal, that a person should not eat it, if the second pasuk is telling me about the prohibition of eating? So it clarifies the Mechaber that bishul, and the Torah refers to eating with the expression of cooking, loimar, to tell us she'einai asur min haTorah, that it is not prohibited from the Torah, elo derech bishul, only if the meat and milk were cooked together, or they transferred the flavor in a way of cooking together, such as roasting. However, if meat and milk were not cooked together, even though they did have a transfer of flavor, but it was not done derech bishul, then min haTorah it is okay. Aval, however, midrabanan rabbinically asur b'chal inyan, it is prohibited in any way to eat meat and milk together, even if they were not cooked together. Concludes the Ramah that kol basar b'chalav, any meat and milk, she'einei asur min haTorah, that is not prohibited from the Torah, meaning the meat and milk were not cooked together, then mutar bahana, we are allowed from the outset to derive benefit from it. Generally, throughout this series, we are going to give overviews of the Shach and the Taz. Being that this is the very first seif that we are learning, I would like to also read them inside. So says the first Shach, and the way you can always identify where the Shach is referencing is the letters of the Shach are surrounded with a half a circle. So the Aleph with a half a circle is referring to the Shach. That the Mechaber says she'einei asur min haTorah, that it is not prohibited from the Torah elo derech bishul, only if there's a transfer of flavor in a way of cooking it. Clarifies the Shach. Kloimar, this means to say, this does not apply through pickling meat and milk together for 24 hours and through salting them together. That even though they transfer flavor, nevertheless, she'einoi derech bishul, this is not considered a derech, a regular way of cooking. So in reference to this prohibition of meat and milk, you have not violated the biblical prohibition. Just to make note that the Bayer Hativ clarifies that sliya, roasting, is considered derech bishul, and if you were to roast meat and milk together, you would be over min haTorah, the prohibition of cooking. Now says Shach Beis, kol basar b'chalav mutar b'hana. The Ramah writes that any meat and milk that it is not prohibited from the Torah is mutar, you're allowed from the outset to have hana. So the Shach first is going to source many opinions that hold like this, that what? That anytime you have meat and milk or chicken and milk that is only asur midrabanan, you are permitted to have hana from it. And then the Shach is going to bring the opinion of the Bach, that the Bach argues and he holds that just like midrabanan there could be issues with eating chicken and milk together, so too there's a prohibition midrabanan of deriving benefit from it. The Shach at the end will also conclude with the opinion of the Maharshal, that he also holds that when you have a mixture that's only prohibited midrabanan, like pickling or salting meat and milk together, the Marshal holds that it is asur midrabanan to have benefit from it, but the Shach will conclude that he does not follow neither the opinion of the Bach nor the opinion of the Marshal, but he follows the opinion of the Ramah, that if it's not prohibited min haTorah, then it is mutar b'hana. So says the Shach inside, that this is from the Tur, and from the Isur ve'eter ha'aruch klal lamed din hey, And v'chein das Machaber b'Sif Gimel, this is also going to be the opinion of the Machaber later in Sif Gimel. That what? That basar oif b'chalav, if you have chicken and milk, she'enei asar b'achila elo midrabanan, that they are only prohibited midrabanan, then mutar bahana af midrabanan. You are allowed to have benefit even midrabanan. And v'chein das hara b'Sefer HaChinuch Mitzvahs Kuf Yud Gimel. And v'chein das harambam Perak Tes Milchos Machalos Asuris Din Dalid Lahedya. This is also the opinion of the Rambam. So the Shach now is saying that the opinion of the Rambam is following the opinion of the Rambam. And v'chein bir devar v'FIRST Mishnah Perak Chafei. So to the Rambam explains it this way in his FIRST Mishnayis. V'chein FIRST Rav Amagi Daitoi. And v'kach eben Marshal Perak Kol Abasar Siman Kuf. And Ushar Achreinim Das HaRambam. This is how many understand the opinion of the Rambam, that chicken and milk is mutar bahana midrabanan. However, says the Shach that this is not the understanding of the Bach. This is not like the way the Bach writes it, that he holds that the Das HaRambam, that the opinion of the Rambam is that the basar oif b'chalav asur bahana midrabanan, that chicken and milk is actually prohibited to have benefit midrabanan. Just like it's prohibited to actually eat it midrabanan. Okay, and v'chein kasav Mordechai Perikin Mamidin. That's also what the Mordechai writes in Perikin Mamidin. And Agas Ashri Perik Basad Avodah Zara from the Urzer Ruah. That what? That Al Yedei Kavush Ol Al Yedei Melicha. That these two things, pickling and salting, transfer flavor, but they're not derech bishul. That they write that it's mutar bahana. And v'chein kasav HaMachaber L'Kamon Soif Siman Tzadik Aleph V'hu Medivrei HaAgur Shehevi Beveis Yosef Sham. However, Marshal Sham, the Marshal over there, he argues on this, that when you have a transfer of flavor through kavush and melicha, it is actually asur bahana midrabanan, just like the Bach's understanding of the Rambam. And concludes the Shach that ve'ein devarav muchrachim, the words of the Maharshal are not proven, and we do not follow that opinion. Rather, we follow the opinion of the Ramah, that this type of mixture of chicken and milk, or kavush and melicha, is actually mutar bahana. Let's read Taz Aleph inside. The way you can identify where the Taz is located is unlike the Shach, where the Shach has a half a circle around its letters. The Taz will always have two half circles surrounding both sides of its letters. Says the Taz, quoting the same Marshal that the Shach quoted at the end of Shach Beis, the Rashal Perak Chafei Siman Kuf. He argues on this that the Rambam writes, and Va'al Mashakasav HaRambam, and on the Mordechai, that he holds Usvirale Misvara Lahachmir Ba'ana. He holds out of logic that you actually need to be Machmir by Hana and say that it is also Asur Midrabanan. And concludes the Taz, like the Shach, the Va'anu, for us, Ein Lanu Ela Divrei Rishonim Acharonim, we only have the opinions of the Rishonim, of the Acharonim, like the Machaber will say in Sif Gimel, and like Ramah writes over here, that anything that is not prohibited min ha-Torah is actually mutar bahana midrabanan. Moving now along to Seif Beis. This Sif is going to clarify that when the Torah said lo yisavashel gedi, that we should not cook a young kid b'chalev imo in its mother's milk, the word gedi, kid, lav dafka, that's not precise. It actually includes any basar behema tahira. And when it says b'chalev imay, the mother's milk, it's also lav dafka, and it would include any milk from a behema tahira. Says the Machaber that gedi, the word gedi, kid, lav dafka, is not specific because the hu adin shur seve'ez. The same din would apply to the meat of an ox and the meat of a sheep and the meat of a goat. And and it doesn't matter if it's its mother's milk. And by the way, the mother of a gedi, of a kid, is an aiz, is a goat. It doesn't have to be cooked in the milk of its mother, which is a goat. But it doesn't matter if it's also in any other milk. It's that the Torah writes, the Torah speaks in a common case. And since it was common that whenever an aiz, whenever a goat would have children, it would generally have more than one. Then it was common practice that people would take one of the kids that were born, they would shecht it, and they would cook it in its mother's milk. And therefore, the Machaber clarifies that that's just the hoive, that was common, but it also applies to behema tahira. Moving now along to Seif Gimel, the Mechaber is going to clarify that the prohibition of basar b'chalav only applies to the meat of a behema tahira, domesticated kosher animal, and to the milk of a behema tahira. But if you have meat or milk of a behema tamea, then there is no prohibition of basar b'chalav, and therefore they are mutar bibishol ubahana. Let's read the Mechaber inside Seif Gimel that this is not custom, ella only the basar behema tahira, with the meat of a kosher domesticated animal, b'chalav behema tahira. Aval, however, basar tahira b'chalav tamea, kosher meat with treifa milk, or basar tamea b'chalav tahira, or treifa meat with kosher milk. There is no prohibition of basar b'chalav, and therefore mutarim bibishol ubahana, even midrabanan, you are allowed to cook and have benefit from it. Obviously, you are not allowed to eat it. Even if there's no prohibition of basar b'chalav, there's still treif mixed in. But regarding bishul and hana, there's no problem. And so to basar chaya v'oif, the meat of a wild kosher animal and of a chicken, afilu b'chalav tahira, even with kosher milk, mutar b'bishul ubahana, you are allowed to cook it and have benefit from it. And even to eat it, it is only prohibited midrabanan. Concludes the Mechaber, aval, however, dagim v'chagavim, fish and grasshoppers, ein bahem isur afilu midrabanan, there isn't even an isur midrabanan to eat them together with milk. Now says the Ramah regarding almond milk, is there a problem of cooking and eating chicken and almond milk or meat and almond milk? So says the Ramah, it depends. That it is our minhag to make milk from almonds, and we place inside of the almond milk basar oif, chicken. Since anyways, the prohibition of chicken and milk is only midrabanan, and I do not have to be concerned of maris ayin. Aval, however, basar behema, the meat of a kosher domesticated animal, if I am going to cook it together with almond milk, then yesh lahaniach etzel hachalav shekedim, I should place next to the milk actual almonds, mishum maris ayin, because of maris ayin. Or equivalent to placing almonds would be to place the bottle of the almond milk or the container of the soy ice cream. Anything that shows clearly there is a hecker that this is actually pariv and you're not violating the prohibition of cooking meat and milk. As it was explained earlier in Siman Samach Vav regarding blood. We will discuss the scenario of the blood in the Shach and Taz when we get there. So going back to the beginning of the Sif, let's now discuss outside Shach, Gimel, and Taz Beis. And they are going to discuss the following. Do we say that when you have treif meat or treif milk that was cooked with something that's kosher, kosher meat or kosher milk, do we say that even though minat Torah there is no issue of basar mechalav, Mida Oyraisa, did the Rabbanan nevertheless still make it asur? So the Shach and the Taz are both going to conclude that no, there is no rabbinic prohibition. However, the Shach and the Taz are going to both bring the opinion of the Bach and the opinion of the Drisha, that they hold that there is an Isur Midrabanan of meat and milk, even though one of the items are treif. What's the nafkamina if we say basar b'chalav by these food items? Anyways, you're not allowed to eat it because you have treif mixed into it. The Bach brings two nafkaminas. Number one is called chanan, which stands for chaticha nasis nevela. We're going to learn a lot about this later at length, but in short, anytime you have a chaticha, a kosher piece of meat, that absorbed flavor from something non-kosher, there's an argument whether we say if this piece remains kosher but has a little bit of non-kosher flavor absorbed in it, Or do we say that this piece, nasas nevela, this piece itself now became treif? And the reason why it matters is because what were to happen if this piece were to then fall into another pot of kosher food? And we know that whenever you have in a pot sigzdi against the Isser becomes batal. What is considered to be batal b'shishim? Do we say you need to have sigzdi only against the treif of flavor absorbed in this piece? Or do we say that since this piece was nasas nevela, you actually need to have sigzdi against this entire piece? So the Bach says that the first nafkamina would be that maybe we should say here, and the Bach holds that we do say here, that when you have, let's say, treifim meat and kosher milk, there's an isur of basar b'chalav b'derabanan, which were to mean that this piece becomes chanan, chaticha nasas nevela. Now, a second nafkamina that he brings is regarding chaticha haru'uya li'schabit. And again, we're going to learn this more later at length, but in short, what this means is if I have a piece of treifim meat and I have 2 pieces of kosher meat, so the rule is that if the treif gets mixed with the kosher, not cooked, simply mixed together, and I cannot identify which one was the treifa one and which ones are kosher, so we know that such a mixture is called yavish b'yavish, dry and dry. They didn't transfer any flavor. And the rule generally is that min ha'torah, it is batal b'rayv. However, if the treifa piece was chaticha haru'uya li'eschabit, if the treifa meat was, let's say, steak, and it's something that's chashuv, honorable, then the rule is that afilu be'elef loy batal, even if it gets mixed into 1,000 pieces, it is not batal. Now, for something to be ru'uya li'eschabit, there's one very important caveat, and that is that this treifa piece has to be a isur mechamas atzmai. It has to be asur from itself. And therefore, coming back to our case, if I were to have, let's say, a kosher piece of meat that was cooked together with treifim milk, and this meat now absorbed the treifim milk, so what is the halacha? If we say that this is basar b'chalav, which means it's chanan, then we can say that if it's steak, it can be considered a chaticha haru'uya li'eschabit because it is now asur mechamas atzmai. But if we do not say there's basar b'chalav, then since originally this piece was kosher, even though it now absorbed the flavor of treifim milk, we cannot apply the rule of chaticha haru'uya li'eschabit. And the Bach and the Drisha say that we do say that it's asur midrabanan for basar b'chalav, and the Shach and the Taz both conclude that we do not say that, but rather we follow, like the Mechaber writes over here, that there is no problem, it's not asur midrabanan at all, and it is mutar bebishol ubehana. Now moving along to Shach Dalid. Shach Dalid is discussing the meat of a chaya and a oif. So the Shach brings the opinion of the Marshal and the Bach that argues with what the Mechaber paskin, that they hold that actually chicken and milk, or chaya and milk, is actually asur mida oiraisa. And the Shach clearly writes that he argues with the opinion of the Marshal and the Bach. And he holds, like the Mechaber, that it is only asur midrabanan. And he concludes by quoting the Rambam that if someone were to say that chicken and milk is asur min haTorah, they are actually violating the prohibition of Bal Tosef, because they are then adding to the Torah's prohibition of meat and milk. It never actually included chicken, or it never actually included a chaya. Now moving along to Shach Hey and Taz Gimel, they are both discussing fish and milk. The Mechaber clearly said that there's no problem, even midrabanan, of having fish and milk. And the Taz quotes from the Beis Yosef that the Beis Yosef actually wrote that there's a problem of having fish and milk because of a sakana. And the Shach and the Taz both say that that was a mistake. Really, it should have said that you're not, the Beis Yosef should have written that you're not allowed to have fish and meat. Until today, we practice this, that fish and meat we do not eat together. We make sure to have separate plates and separate cutlery, mishum sakana, because it's a danger. And therefore, what the Beis Yosef wrote is actually a mistake. And there is no problem of having fish and milk together. Moving now along to the Ramah that was discussing the scenario of almond milk, where the Ramah said that we are not concerned for Maris Ayin when it's chicken, because it's only b'derabanan, and we're only concerned if you cook meat in almond milk. Where did the Ramah learn this from? He concludes by saying that we learn this from Dam. And both the Shach and the Taz bring this scenario, that we know that generally it is forbidden mida oiraisa, with the Isur Kares, for a person to eat blood. However, there's one big exception. We know that the blood from a fish is completely mutar. Now, what were to happen if a person extracted all of the blood from a fish and placed it into a keli? They put it into a cup. Now we have a problem of maris ayin. Someone might look at this blood. They might not know that it comes from a fish, and they might think that the person who's eating it is eating blood that's asur min haTorah. So the halacha is that a person has to take kaskasim, he has to take the scales of a fish, and he has to put it in the cup or next to the cup to make sure to clarify that there should be no maris ayin, and people should know that this is actually blood from a fish. So this is the source of the Ramah, and the Ramah says that we clearly see that we are only concerned for maris ayin in a case where there is a concern of an isur de'oraisa. Now the Shach argues with the Ramah. He says that no, really we find many scenarios in the Torah where even when there is only an Isur D'Rabbanan, we are concerned for Maris Ayin. And therefore the Shach concludes that even if I am cooking and eating chicken and almond milk, I should still place the almonds next to it to absolve myself from Maris Ayin. Now the Taz, he writes a little bit different than the Shach. This is in Taz Daled. And he says the following. He says that really, even the Ramah himself, when he said there's no concern of Maris Ayin by chicken and almond milk, that is only b'diavad. If a person, let's say, already did it, or let's say they never had any almonds, then we say that we don't forbid a person from eating it because it's only midrabanan. But always, lechatchila, even the Ramah would agree that a person should place almonds next to it, because anytime you're able to fix something and clarify that there is no problem here because it's just almond milk, even for Isur D'Rabbanan, a person should be careful and do so. We have now concluded Seifim Aleph through Gimel. In Mirza Hashem, and the next year we will continue with Seif Daled.